We'll tally them all up and see, in every arc in the main continuity, who truly is the strongest. In the Saiyan Saga, it's pretty straightforward. Number 3 is Gohan when he transforms into his Grade 8 form. For the brief moment he is in that form, he is the 3rd strongest being in that arc. With a power level of around 10,000 by the end of the Saiyan arc, he's number 3. Number 2 is Goku in his Kaioken x4 form. This was the strongest version of Goku, and even though it was only for a few seconds, in those few seconds his power level reached 32,000. With complete ferocity, Vegeta comes in with a power level of 180,000. By the end of the Saiyan arc, the most amount of power that anyone had reached was Vegeta. Moving on to the Namek arc, this arc begins and ends when they arrive on Namek, up until the defeat of the Ginyu Force. During this period of time, the 3 strongest characters, number 3 is Vegeta as soon as he hits the Senzu Bean and gets the Zenkai boost. Number 2 is Goku when he powers up after 100 times gravity training. And number 1, even though he hadn't done anything at that point, is First Form Frieza, coming in with a power level of 500,000. Moving on to the Frieza arc, this story picks up when they fight Frieza up until his defeat. It's a fight with one dude that gets 50 episodes, so it has its own separate arc. Coming in as the 3rd strongest during this fight is not actually Vegeta, and I was surprised by this. It's actually Piccolo, after he absorbs Gohan and Krillin's energy for that brief amount of time and kicks Frieza in the back of the head. The 2nd strongest is Frieza, and of course, number 1, the strongest character in the series up until this point, Super Saiyan 1 Goku. Moving on to the Android arc, similar to the Namek and Frieza saga, this is kind of split into 2 segments. You have the Android arc and then you have the Cell arc. The Android arc would go from the arrival of Trunks all the way up until Cell attains his perfect form. The top 3 strongest characters for the Android arc is number 3, Second Form Cell. Coming in at number 2 is Trunks, and number 1, Vegeta. Even though Trunks and Vegeta had a very similar power around this time, and Trunks actually produced more of it, Vegeta was by far the better fighter and used his power to make him actually a lot more effective against his opponents. So I'm going to give it to Vegeta here. He even said himself if he wanted to, he could bulk up just like Trunks did and get the same power. He just knew that wouldn't work. Moving on to the Cell games, the top 3 here is number 3, Super Saiyan Goku, number 2, Super Perfect Cell, and number 1, of course, Super Saiyan 2 Gohan at full power. In the final saga of DBZ, the Buu saga, the top 3 is number 3, Ultimate Gohan, number 2, Super Buu Gohan Absorbed, and number 1 is Super Vegito. That's where DBZ ends, and for a bit of a halftime calculation, going off this format where 3rd place is worth 1 point, 2nd place is worth 2 points, and 1st is worth 3 points, Goku has 8, Vegeta has 7, and Gohan has 5. Those are the top 3 moving into the era of Dragon Ball Super, starting with the Battle of Gods arc. The top 3 here is pretty simple, and it's a big change from what we're used to in DBZ. We're going to be seeing a lot of reoccurring gods on this list from now on. Number 3 is Super Saiyan God Goku, number 2 is Beerus, and number 1 is Whis. Moving on to the resurrection of Frieza, the top 3 here, I did put Vegeta ahead of Goku slightly because he had been training 6 months earlier with Whis. Beerus again at number 2, and Whis is still at number 1. Next up is the Universe 6 tournament, where not only do we get introduced to a whole other universe and gods, this is when the Omni King first shows up. The top 3 goes like this. Coming in at number 3 is Beerus and Champa together, coming in at number 2 is Vados and Whis together, and number 1 is the Omni King. The Goku Black arc is up next, and once again, we get introduced into someone who is even stronger than the Angels, the Grand Priest. This is the first time he shows up, so the top 3 goes like this. Number 3 is Whis or any of the Angels. Number 2 is the Grand Priest. And number 1, again, it's got to be the Omni King. Closing up onto the end of Dragon Ball Super here, we only have 3 more arcs to go. In the Tournament of Power, since there was every God of Destruction and every Angel there, it actually makes it very simple. The top 3 are number 3, all of the gods, number 2, all of the Angels, including the Grand Priest, number 1 again, the Omni King. Next up is the Broly movie, and for the first time in a long time, the Omni King doesn't actually show up in this story, so you can't put him as number 1. The only gods that show up in this movie are Beerus and Whis, so the top 3 is number 3, Gogeta, number 2, Beerus, and number 1, Whis. The final tally up now for the strongest in each arc is looking a lot different, and it is very representative of what's happening in Dragon Ball right now. The Dragon Ball Super half of the tally is completely dominated by the gods and the angels. Goku and Vegeta are sitting there both on 1 point. Beerus is on 8 points, the Omni King is on 9, and Whis is on 13. Over time, as long as stories keep coming out, this will change, but for right now, those are the strongest in each arc.